Ho ho ho, my god, hey! Welcome back to my stagey YouTube channel, Festive Edition! If you are meeting me for the first time, my name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre, and this is my stagey YouTube channel where I review shows that I have been invited to see as an independent theatre critic here in the UK, and I talk about the theatre industry worldwide, both in the West End and on Broadway. And today, even though it is still technically late November, for the UK theatre industry, it is beginning to look a lot like Christmas, because I have started getting my first Christmas theatre show invitations of the year, and I recently went to go and see the press night of Elf the Musical, which has just opened at the Dominion Theatre, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to be bringing you my full review, and that is why it is very Christmassy in here, and I am dressed like Santa. My cheeks are actually really rosy in this video. Am I well? I hope I'm well. I feel warm. Do I feel warm to you? You can't tell. Am I turning into Santa? Like the plot of the Santa Claus? Did I kill Santa? Am I Tim Allen? Did I kill Tim Allen? Who's to say? But as promised, today I'm going to be bringing you my full review of the stage musical Elf, currently playing at the Dominion Theatre. Now, before I do, if you enjoy today's video, make sure to subscribe to my stagey YouTube channel if you are interested in all things theatre here on YouTube, and if you have stagey friends, make sure to share me with them as well. Also, you can find me on other social media platforms. I am on Twitter, I am on Instagram, I am on TikTok, at Mickey Joe Theatre. And if you really enjoyed today's video, feel free to use the super thanks button down below the video somewhere here to give me a little stagey tip. That very much helps me as a stagey content creator. Now, let's talk about Elf. So just as a little bit of background to the stage musical of Elf, I feel like the film version of Elf is one of the biggest Christmas films of all time to have come out in recent years. You know, we have a lot of enduring Christmas classics from yesteryear, but I feel like Elf, since it's come out as a film, has really shot up in terms of popularity, and everyone knows Elf now. It has this huge cross-generational appeal, and so making a stage musical version of Elf, I think, made a lot of sense when it happened. This was in the late 2000s on Broadway that this first appeared. And yet it hasn't had the same success on Broadway as it has had since it started appearing in the West End. And we have had Elf almost every Christmas in some form or another here in the West End. It's happened regionally, it's happened at the Dominion Theatre a few times, so Elf is becoming a pretty familiar fixture in the West End at Christmas time. And it's a pretty faithful musicalisation of the film. I think with a film so beloved and so recently remembered, that you're gonna get something incredibly faithful. So it does recreate it quite uncannily on stage. So if you're looking for something slightly more original, slightly more creative, this perhaps isn't the show for you, but at the same time it's the festive season, and it's Elf, and it's merry, and it's jolly, and it's joyous. And so I think if you give yourself over to all of its sparkle, twinkle, jolly, jangly, happy, festive goodness, you can also just have a great time. So bearing all of that in mind, let me tell you what I thought about the show. Now, this was my first time seeing a professional production of Elf. I had seen my friend appearing in an Amdram production before, but this was the first time I'd seen this professional staging of the show, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very sweet, very endearing. It gave me all of the Christmas vibes that I needed, even in late November when I was coming in maybe a little bit stubborn that I wasn't going to feel Christmassy, but I had a great time and I enjoyed myself. And it sparked a lot of joy within me, a lot of festive joy. So I'm giving this a 4-star review. I think there's lots to enjoy about Elf. I think it has this cross-generational appeal. I think if you're a kid, there's so much to enjoy about it, but it doesn't ever feel like it's pandering to its audience. I think because of the romantic subplot, I think because of the family in New York and all of the stuff that's going on there, I think the world that he stumbles into is such a recognizable adult world with real adult problems. It's really more of an adult story than a kid's one, but kids latch onto his personality and the way that he interacts with stuff, and they obviously love the film, and so there's a lot of joy for them in that, but I definitely wouldn't say it's a children's show. It's obviously a very family-friendly show, but I think inherently it's probably a more satisfying plot for adult theatregoers, to be perfectly honest. Now, obviously it only gets staged around the Christmas period because that's when people want to go and see Elf, but I think it's not like some of these Christmas narratives and shows and films that are just so Christmassy from the off, it kind of is genius in the fact that it makes perfect sense to see in November, because the whole thing is about this New York City community who are quite reluctant to feel festive and have maybe lost the joy of Christmas and maybe have lost belief in Santa Claus, and he has to win them over with his relentless positivity and zest for all things festive. Festive zest. Festive zest. Oh, that's a good turn of phrase. Festive zest. Festive zest. Festive zest. Festive zest. And it's playing at the Dominion Theatre in the West End, which, if you don't know, is a huge space. We Will Rock You was there for years. More recently, Prince of Egypt, the musical, has been there. And then we've sort of been cycling through a few touring productions that have transferred in. So Dirty Dancing was there earlier this year, followed by Grease, which was running over the summer. I love to see anything in the Dominion that can fill that space. I love to see that enormous stage getting used, and this does, you know, it has these really big set pieces, it has these big production numbers, there's some really great choreography, the whole thing has a lot of energy. Like I said, it's difficult not to enjoy it. Is it the most creative, original, clever thing in the world? Not necessarily. But if you bring your inner child to the theatre with you and give yourself over to the joy of it all, I think it's very difficult not to enjoy. That being said, I do have a couple of areas of criticism, and we're going to talk about those next. Which way is next? That way? That way? I don't know. So the thing about Christmas stories is they have to give you that moment of wonderment and joy, and the films are really great at doing that. And there were a couple really easy wins that this production just shot a little bit wide of the net. Did I just use a sports metaphor? What's happening to me right now? It just felt like a couple of missed opportunities. One of them is before the song There Is a Santa Claus, which is a great song. And they have this big LED screen window at the back of this New York apartment. This suspiciously large New York apartment, I will say. That family must be wealthy. And it's looking out over the New York City skyline, and you know you're about to see Santa Claus flying in his sleigh. So I was so excited for just the set of that and how we were going to see it while the child is looking out of the window and the parent isn't watching, and he's obviously going to walk up to the window and you're going to see Santa Claus flying past in his sleigh. And what I thought would have been so special and so magical is if you saw just like a little twinkle and then you hear the swell in the orchestra or band, to be more accurate for the size of the band that it was for this production. And then that grows, and then you see this whooshing past of Santa on his sleigh, and you hear the noise of it, and you hear him laughing or ho-ho-hoing into the night, something magical like that. But it just happens that he's staring at this very calm skyline, and then this slightly awkward clip art graphic of a sleigh just moves past in this very static, unconvincing way, as if it's right outside his window, and Santa's just suddenly like there rather than being in the distance, rather than growing. It has no sense of depth, and it wasn't particularly like building of anticipation. It was just nothing was happening, and then Santa, and then he's like, oh my gosh, as you would. Aside from anything else, it wasn't even just that Santa was there, it was that Santa nearly crashed into the damn building. And then he goes and tells his mum about it, she goes to the window, and then she sees it, because the whole thing happens and is repeated exactly but from the other side. And I just think that there was a more special way we could have had the sleigh appearing. I think we could have teased it, we could have anticipated it a little bit more, and had that be more of a moment where they see Santa for the first time. The other moment is this really poignant part at the end of the show when Buddy is trying to help Santa's sleigh restart, and he is trying to get all of these collected local people who are surrounding this live news broadcast to believe in Santa again by reading their childhood Christmas requests off of a tablet and telling them what they had asked for and trying to get them to believe in Santa really existing, and it's not working. And he gives this really heartwarming, tear-jerking speech about what's really important at Christmas and about togetherness and community. And then it starts snowing on stage, which is magical and beautiful and looks fantastic. I mean, any time that snow happens on a stage looks fantastic. And he's willing someone to start singing. He's trying to get the crowd to sing, and then we hear the lone voice of Jovi, who has been his love interest, Zooey Deschanel, from the film, and she has been this Christmas skeptic the entire time, and she said she doesn't sing. We hear her singing first, and then she sort of walks out from behind some other members of the crowd and walks up to him. They'd had a tiff before, but she forgives him because he made it snow, and she's just so enamored with all of that because she's always wanted to see the snow because she's never seen the snow before. And that's all very lovely. but there is a better way of ordering the situation. I don't know if this is from the original script of the show that necessitates it being in that order, but it does feel like it's wrongly arranged to me. Perhaps I'm misremembering the film, and that's a very faithful recreation of what happens in the film. From my memory, it's Zooey Deschanel trying to get the crowd to all sing Santa Claus is Coming to Town, or Let It Snow, one of the big Christmas songs. But what I think should happen here is he makes the whole speech, she hears the speech, we don't have to see her yet necessarily, but he's there alone, almost giving up, willing someone to sing with him. She appears, she starts singing just because she can see how much it means to him, not because of the snow. She walks up to him, and then they sing together, and at the moment that they meet, their eyes locked onto each other, then it should start snowing, because we want to see her reaction to the snow. We know when she says earlier in the show that she's never seen the snow and that's always been her dream, we know that snow is going to happen and we want to see her react to that. And the fact that when it does happen and she walks out from behind the crowd, she's reacting to him and singing, and we don't actually see her reacting to it start snowing, I think that's a real disappointment, for me at least as an audience member. I wanted to see her reaction to the snow, and I think the magic of them singing together, that should be what triggers the snow. While I remember, one of the criticism I have about this show, in the curtain call, they all start tap dancing for what I believe is the first time in the show. I don't recall any other tap, and it's fake tap. There is a tap track happening over the top. I mean, they're doing tap steps, and I think some of them have taps on their little snow boots, but they're playing fake tap sounds over the top. Why? Why? I mean, probably for logistics, but also, why? So let's talk about the cast for this specific production. There are a few people I want to talk about. We have to start with Simon Lipkin, who is playing Buddy. Now, Ben Forster has been playing this role for a few years in the West End. He has now passed the Christmas cracker, if you like, to Simon Lipkin. Simon is a terrific, beloved actor here in the West End who has done a bunch of fantastic comedy parts before. He was part of the original West End cast of Avenue Q over here, and he's done a few other things since. He is fantastic as Buddy, and he just understands the vocalization of comedy and the rhythm and the timing and the music of comedy. Every single line that he delivers and his little ad-libs, and it's so perfectly Will Ferrell-esque. He understands the tone of why Will Ferrell's comedy works, and he is so tuned into that, but he makes it funny in his own distinctive way. The sound of it all and his vocal delivery of all of those lines is absolutely faultless. He's hilarious. He's Buddy the Elf. He's completely convincing. He is everything you need. It's childlike, but also slightly knowing, because he does have this spectrum of material where he occasionally has to deliver slightly more adult humour. But he's really funny, and it's not grating, and I think that's something that some people might struggle with Elf. It's not to everyone's appetite, but Simon Lipkin is endearing enough that you can stay with him the whole show, and you root for him, and you want everything to go his way, even when you can see him getting into situations that you as an audience member know is not what you want him to do. You're willing him to not react in the way that he thinks he ought to, and whatever else happens in the plot. The one thing I think could have made Simon's performance even better, and I do think I'm a bit of a lone voice here after speaking to some other people who were there on press night, I just think he could be slightly more animated in his face. And not to say it has to be a Will Ferrell impression, but Will Ferrell facially as Elf was so extreme, his eyes so wide, like screaming, and the eyebrows and all of that. And Simon Lipkin's face is a little bit more subdued the entire time. Vocally, he is giving you those extremes and the joy and the shock and the sort of wider than average emotional spectrum that he has as Buddy, where he just feels everything very intensely and he's incredibly emotional all of the time. But I'm not getting that from his face. I want more of that from his facial expression. And I don't know if that's because with Avenue Q and with a few other shows that he's done since, he's worked a lot with puppets. And Avenue Q is a show where all of the animation comes through the voice and very little of it comes through the facial performance. Next, we have Georgina Castle opposite him as Jovi. Now, this is a very difficult role to get right because Zooey Deschanel also incredibly distinctive in the film. And the mistake I think that a lot of people make with Jovi is when she's directed on stage, it goes in a passive-aggressive direction. And Zooey Deschanel is kind of apathetic in the film, and she's a little bit sad and she's a bit pessimistic, but she's never quite as passive-aggressive as she is depicted in the script for the stage show. I think she just comes across a little bit snarkier and a little bit meaner, and she has a song that kind of perpetuates that similar sentiment, and I don't know if that's the best way to pitch her in this story, because inevitably quite early on, she just keeps getting won over in every single scene. I wanted for her to gradually be won over, but the script has these moments where he just keeps charming her because we have to justify her coming in and actually agreeing to go on this date. And I think that's because she starts so snarky and so against it that it wouldn't make sense for her to agree to even go on a date with him if she's not won over to a certain extent. But because he's won her over already, it's kind of the end of that arc. I would like to see her coming in softer and sort of uncertain about him, but gradually warming to him, rather than being like, no, definitely not. I hate Christmas. Oh, I'm convinced I'll go on a date with you, but I hate Christmas. But I like it now. But well, no, I hated it, but then I like it again. She just keeps flip-flopping between the two. And it's not particularly satisfying. I really enjoyed her performance of the song Never Fall in Love with an Elf, and she has some lovely moments throughout the show. I just think it's a challenging character to really pitch in a satisfying way. And Georgina, you may remember, was one of the two stepsisters in Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella, where she was this comedy standout. She was hilarious with what little material that she had. And so I think I was maybe expecting just a little bit more from some of her comedy choices in the song Never Fall in Love with an Elf. I mean, you have some great standalone lines in that song. You also have some slightly challenging jokes. The line about Philadelphia, where the Fia is delayed for a little bit, that is never going to work. I don't care who is delivering that line. That's never going to be funny. It's the weirdest joke ever. Continuing through the supporting cast, we have Tom Chambers and Rebecca Locke, who are playing Buddy's father and stepmother, respectively. Now, Tom Chambers arguably isn't old enough for this role. In fact, not even arguably. He is inarguably too young for this role, and he is ever so slightly miscast in this perspective. And there's a few moments in the show where he gets to really dance. Obviously, he won Strictly Come Dancing, and he's done a lot of dance shows since, like Top Hat, like Crazy for You, I believe, and he is a phenomenal dance talent. And we get to see those few moments where he's being sprightly and youthful and leading mannish, and you're like, yes, this is what you should be doing, not this grumpy old New York businessman in Elf. It's a weird casting for him, and he is not sufficiently older than Simon Lipkin for that relationship to really make sense. It would come across more endearingly if it was an actual grumpy old man type that gets softened by the whole thing, whereas Tom Chambers is so sweet and charismatic, you know that he's putting on a stern face and you're just waiting for him to melt back into the lovely Tom Chambers that we know. He does a really good job of trying to convince me that he's right for that role, but he inevitably just isn't. I don't know if this was that they wanted to have more name recognition within the cast because he's very well known, and they thought this was another opportunity to cast someone who's going to bring in some more audience members. I don't know. He does a great job with the material. I cannot fault his performance, but he is just not the right type or age for this role. Opposite him, Rebecca Locke, on the other hand, is damn near perfect. And when she was announced for this, she doesn't have that much material. I can't remember the character's name, but it's the wife of Buddy's dad. Like I said, she doesn't have that much to do throughout the show, but knowing Rebecca Locke's incredibly wide and incredibly versatile skill set, I knew instantly that she would be perfect for this. And everything in this role is so aligned with what she can do well. Her vocal type and her comic delivery, and I feel like she's the perfect age and she's the perfect look now to be playing so many of these great roles for her, because she's always had this voice, this big diva, matriarch voice that's maybe a little bit older than the characters she's been playing up to this point, and I feel like she's now aged into this perfect category for her. Really exciting for these years of her career. But she is just phenomenal. Every single line, every single comedy aside she gets is knocked out of the park. She's wonderful in this, and like scene-stealing territory. Absolutely amazing. She gets possibly the biggest laugh in the show, which when it's Elf and that character's getting the biggest laugh in the show, that really says something. But it's the moment when she finally gets to meet Santa when he's crashed in Central Park, and she goes over and sort of curtsies and introduces herself to him and says, "I loved you in Miracle on 34th Street." That is hysterically funny. Just the way that she does it, she's ever so slightly flirtatious and coy and girlish and a bit embarrassed, but it's so funny. She pitches it perfectly. She understands the comic tone of this show perfectly. What would I say is the highlight moment of the show? I think from the second act, you start to get these numbers that just repeatedly knock it out of the park. The opening to the second act is this weird song that I guess foreshadows things later in the plot, and I guess is important, but in terms of the actual narrative of where we're going with Buddy and his family, it is a little bit of a sidestep. It doesn't really further that particular plot line. It's Buddy in a Chinese restaurant with a bunch of seasonal temp Santa workers who are all very disheartened after a disappointing Christmas season. They sing a big production number called Nobody Cares About Santa Claus, and you have all these dancing Santas, and that's really funny, and the choreography for that is amazing, and the few female ensemble members in that number really sell it, as well as the waitresses in this Chinese restaurant. But then after that, you just have number after number after number that is really great and just ups the energy level even more. I will say, though, it's not my favourite song in the score. The song that's the story of Buddy the Elf, where they're trying to push Buddy's story as a children's book to Walter's boss in the publishing company. That is such an earworm, and that will be in your head, even though not my favourite song in the score, but just such an earworm. It will get you. My favourite song in the score is There Is a Santa Claus, that Buddy's younger brother Michael sings with his mum. This is a great song. It's honestly so good. And the two of them together, I have to shout out the actor playing Michael as well. He was amazing, and he belted the higher part of the end, and Rebecca Locke took the lower harmony. But it's just fantastic. It sounded fantastic, and it's such a well-written song that I think that has to be my highlight moment of the show. For the rest of the audience, it was probably the Buddy the Elf one. That got a really big reaction. For me, it was There Is a Santa Claus. I love that song. Oh, wait, I lied. No, I lied completely. Okay, my highlight moment was right at the end, and this made me cry. So I told you before that they had already made snow happen on stage, but when they do finally get Santa's sleigh to fly back into the sky, it lifts up off of the ground, and I was like, oh yay, amazing. I wish they would fly it over the audience, but I don't expect they will. And then they did. Santa had a full Mary Poppins defying gravity moment. His sleigh came right out over the audience, and try as you might, you cannot see whatever is holding it up there. It is very cleverly done. I have my suspicions, and you can kind of work it out how it must be happening, but you can't see it. The way that they do this is amazing. You have Santa flying out above you, and then it starts snowing over the stalls. That was just magical. I cried. It was Christmas. I was a child again. Like, in that moment, you stop being a discerning theatre-going critic and you just become a child overwhelmed by the joy of Christmas. You cannot suppress the level of happiness that evokes in you. What can I tell you about the theatre-going experience? The Dominion Theatre is huge. It has this lovely foyer space, and they're doing all of the Christmassy things. It's got beautiful Christmas decorations inside. They're serving mulled wine from the bars. There was a really long queue in the interval that almost threatened to delay the second act when I was there, so maybe get your drinks before the show. They also, which I always love at the Dominion, they have this amazing little gift shop within the foyer. They're selling loads of elf merchandise, including the elf plush that's there behind me. They're selling mugs and Christmas decorations and t-shirts and all sorts of things. There's loads of very cute elf merch in the foyer shop at the Dominion Theatre. Also, if you're going with a small child or you're just a short person, you can get booster seats for the seats in the Dominion Theatre. I do believe they cost £1 from the gift shop, so that's something to be aware of as well. But those have been my thoughts about Elf the Musical at the Dominion. If you've been lucky enough to see this show already this year, let us all know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And if you would like to review the show for yourself, click on the link in the description. Sign up for an account with ShowScore. That's a website where you can review all of the shows that you have seen at the theatre, and you can also follow all of my reviews that get posted to that website as well. Click on the link now, thank me later. And thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel for plenty more content coming very soon, including a lot more Christmas reviews. I'm seeing so many festive shows this year, including another one tomorrow, in fact. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any of the festive Stagey content. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a Stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching, have a Stagey day. Subscribe!